Hello, I'm Harold. I'm 87 years old, and you're probably wondering what an old man like me is doing talking to you through this screen. Well, my grandson says I need to tell you something, says the way I live my life could help you with something he calls anxiety, depression, and a bunch of modern words that didn't exist when I was young. So here I am, sitting on my porch like I do every evening for more than 50 years. And I'm going to tell you why this chair, these flowers, and this piece of old wood might be exactly what you need to hear today. Look, I don't know much about the internet. I don't have one of those smartphones, and until a month ago, I didn't know what YouTube was. But my grandson came last week, took this picture you're seeing, and told me it had gone viral, whatever that means. He said thousands of people were looking at my photo, commenting on my flowers, on my porch, on my way of living, and I told him, boy, I'm just sitting here like always. There's nothing special about that. But he insisted. He told me that people your age, people who live in cities, who work in offices, who spend all day looking at screens, are forgetting how to live. He told me they're paying thousands of dollars to therapists, buying apps to meditate, taking pills to sleep, all because they can't find peace. And when he told me that, something in my chest tightened, because I know that peace they're looking for, and let me tell you something, it doesn't cost a dime. Every morning I wake up at 5:30. Not because I have to. I don't work the farm like before. My children and grandchildren take care of that now. I wake up because my body is used to it, and because there's something sacred about watching the sunrise that I never get tired of witnessing. I make my coffee, the same coffee I've had for 60 years. Nothing fancy, just black and strong coffee. I sit in this same chair, and I watch how the world wakes up. The birds are first, always the birds. Then the light changes, from that dark blue to a soft pink, and if I'm lucky, if the weather is perfect, I see how the sun's rays first touch the treetops over there in the forest. I don't take pictures. I don't post it anywhere. I just see it, keep it in my memory, and go on with my day. Then come the flowers. You see all these petunias, these geraniums, these marigolds surrounding me. My wife, Martha, may she rest in peace, she started this 40 years ago. She planted the first pot on this porch and told me, Harold, a house without flowers is like a day without sun. I didn't pay much attention at first. I was a practical man, busy with the farm, with the crops, with things that put food on the table. Flowers seemed like an unnecessary luxury to me, but she persisted. Every spring she planted more, and I watched how she sat here in the evenings after a full day of work, caring for those plants like they were her babies. And slowly, without realizing it, I started helping her. First just carrying the bags of soil, then watering when she was busy. Later learning which plants need sun and which prefer shade. When Martha died 10 years ago, I thought about letting the flowers die too. It seemed too painful to maintain them. But one morning I went out and saw that one of her favorite petunias had sprouted anew, strong and purple like the sky at sunset. And something in me broke and healed at the same time. I understood that caring for these flowers was caring for her memory, but it was also caring for myself. Now I spend 2 hours every morning with them. I check each plant, remove dead leaves, water the ones that are thirsty, talk to them. Yes, I talk to my flowers, and before you think I'm crazy, let me tell you that talking to something that grows, that responds to your care by blooming more beautifully each day is more therapeutic than anything you'll find in a pill bottle. When my hands are in the soil, when I'm pulling weeds or planting new seeds, my mind calms down. I don't think about bills. I don't worry about things I can't control. I don't agonize about the future. I'm just there, in that moment, feeling the cold earth between my fingers, smelling that aroma of humidity and life, seeing earthworms doing their invisible but essential work. My grandson told me there are scientific studies now that prove that touching soil reduces something called cortisol, which is a stress hormone. I told him I don't need studies to know that. I feel it every time I put my hands in a pot. My body knows it even if my mind doesn't know the fancy words to explain it. After the garden, I do my chores. I sweep the porch. I fix whatever's broken. I walk around the property checking that everything's in order. I eat my simple lunch, usually something we grew here. And then, if the weather's good, I take a nap in this chair. Not because I'm old and tired, but because I've learned that rest isn't weakness, it's wisdom. When I was young, I worked from sunrise to sunset without stopping, thinking that resting was wasting time. It took me until 60 to understand that a man who doesn't rest is a man who's running toward his grave. Now I sleep when I'm tired, eat when I'm hungry, and sit when my body asks me to. It's simple. Animals do it naturally. Humans complicate it. But let me tell you about the evenings, because the evenings are when everything makes sense. Around 5 o'clock, when the heat of the day starts to drop, I come out with my coffee or my iced tea. I sit exactly where I'm sitting now, and I simply exist. My grandson asked me what I do here sitting for hours. I told him I do everything and nothing. I observe. That's my main activity. I observe how the light changes on the tree leaves. I observe squirrels fighting over territory. I observe butterflies visiting my flowers, and I've learned to recognize different types just by how they fly. I observe the clouds moving, and I can predict tomorrow's weather better than any weather app my grandson obsessively checks on his phone. I listen. The sounds change depending on the time. Early afternoon, it's the songbirds. At sunset, the crickets arrive. I listen to the wind in the leaves, and each tree sounds different. The oak deep and constant, the poplar trembling with any breeze. I listen to tractors in the distance, children playing at the neighbor's house 2 miles away, dogs barking complete conversations that only they understand. I think, but not like you think now, jumping from one worry to another, mentally checking endless to-do lists. I let thoughts come when they want to come. Sometimes I think about Martha, about our 52 years together, about the silly fights we had, about the laughter we shared. Sometimes I think about my children, about how we raised them in this house, on this porch, where they learned to walk and where I taught them to recognize constellations. Sometimes I think about decisions I made decades ago, and I review them without judging myself, just trying to understand who I was then and who I am now. Sometimes I don't think about anything in particular. I just let my mind wander like a river that knows where it's going without needing a map. And sometimes, many times, neighbors pass by walking. They stop. We talk, not about important things necessarily. We talk about the weather, about how the crops are doing, about who's sick, who got married, who died. We talk about real life, face to face, without filters or screens in between. And when they leave, we both feel a little less alone. My grandson tells me that you young people are more connected than ever, but feel lonelier than any previous generation. He tells me you have thousands of friends on those social networks, but no one to sit with on a porch. And that breaks my heart because I can't imagine a life without these moments, without these simple conversations that remind us we're part of a community, that we matter, that we exist in the real world and not just the digital one. This chair I'm sitting in is 63 years old. I made it myself when Martha was pregnant with our first child. The wood is from an oak that fell in a storm on my father's property. I carved each spindle, sanded each surface, assembled it without a single nail, just with carpentry joints that my father taught me and that his father taught him. This chair has held my weight for decades. It held Martha while she nursed our babies. It held my children when they were heartbroken teenagers. It held my grandchildren while I told them stories. And now it holds me, an old man who probably doesn't have many more years to sit in it, but who's grateful for every evening he still can. There's something deeply comforting about having objects that last, that have history, that carry the marks of time and use. This chair isn't perfect. It has stains from spilled coffee. It has marks where my grandchildren carved their initials when they thought I wasn't looking. It has that shine that only comes from decades of hands touching it. And each imperfection tells a story, proves that life happened here. You young people, my grandson tells me, change phones every 2 years, clothes every season, apartments whenever you can find something better. Nothing stays. Nothing has history. Everything is disposable. And then you wonder why you feel empty, rootless, disconnected from anything real. Look at these flowers again. I didn't buy them already grown from a fancy nursery. I started most from seeds or cuttings I traded with neighbors. That white petunia comes from a cutting my neighbor Sarah gave me 15 years ago from a plant her grandmother gave her. Those red geraniums come from seeds Martha saved from our first garden 45 years ago. These plants have genealogies, histories, connections to people who aren't even alive anymore. When I water these flowers, I'm not just keeping plants alive. I'm keeping memories alive, relationships, pieces of history that matter even though they'll never appear in any book. And there's something deeply satisfying in that. In knowing that when I'm gone, these plants will continue, someone else will care for them, and maybe in 50 years another old man will be sitting here watering the great-granddaughters of these same petunias. My grandson asked me if I feel lonely here, now that Martha's gone, now that my children have their own busy lives in the city. I told him there's a difference between being alone and feeling lonely. I'm alone many hours of the day, yes, but I don't feel lonely. I'm accompanied by these flowers, by the birds, by the memories, by the earth beneath my feet, by the sky above my head. I feel lonely when I go to the city and see all of you surrounded by people, but with your faces buried in those screens, not talking to each other, not looking at each other, existing together but completely isolated. That's loneliness. That scares me. Let me tell you something I learned after 87 years on this planet. Happiness doesn't come from having more things, more money, more followers, more likes, more of anything. It comes from having enough and knowing it's enough. It comes from doing things that have meaning, even if that meaning is only understood by you. It comes from caring for something beyond yourself, whether it's a garden, an animal, another person, a piece of land. It comes from daily rhythms that anchor your life, that give you structure without imprisoning you. I have my routine. Wake up, coffee, sunrise, garden, chores, lunch, nap, porch, dinner, news, bed. It's the same routine I've had for decades. And my grandson tells me that sounds boring, that he needs variety, constant stimulation, new experiences. I tell him that peace doesn't come from constant novelty, it comes from deep familiarity. From knowing something so well that you no longer have to think about it, you just flow with it. These hands you see, wrinkled and sun-spotted, have done the same work for 60 years. They've planted thousands of seeds. They've harvested tons of crops. They've built fences, repaired tractors, loaded hay bales, petted animals, held babies, held my wife as she died. These hands know what it is to work, to create, to transform raw material into something useful, something beautiful, something that feeds life. And at the end of the day, when I look at these hands, I see evidence of a life lived. Not in numbers in a bank account, not in followers on social media, not in titles or awards, in calluses and scars, in strength that remains despite age, in the ability to still plant a seed and trust it will grow. My grandson tells me your generation suffers from something they call a crisis of meaning, that you have all the material resources you need but can't find purpose. And I think maybe the problem is you're looking for meaning in the wrong places. Meaning isn't in your head, it's not something you think until you discover. It's in your hands, in what you do, in what you create, in what you care for. Look, I'm no philosopher. I barely finished high school before having to start working full-time on the farm. I haven't read the books you read. I haven't traveled to the places you travel, but I've lived in the same place for 87 years. And let me tell you, there's a depth in that that all the travel in the world can't teach you. I know every tree on this property. I know which was planted the year my eldest son was born. I know which fell in the storm of 73. I know which has the eagle's nest that returns every spring. I know every change in this land, every flood, every drought, every abundant season, and every difficult season. And that knowledge, that deep intimacy with a place, gives me something no meditation app can give you. It gives me belonging. I belong to this land as much as it belongs to me. When I die, my body will become part of this soil, and the flowers that grow here will carry molecules of who I was. And there's something comforting in that, in knowing I won't disappear. I'll just transform. I'll keep being part of this place I loved. You move so much, change so much, that you never get to belong anywhere. And without belonging, without roots, it's hard to flourish. You're like potted plants that are constantly moved. You can never put down deep roots, so you remain small, fragile, dependent on constant care. This porch isn't just a porch. It's the place where Martha told me she was pregnant with our first child. It's where my father died. Sitting in this very chair, watching the sunset one last time. It's where my daughter introduced me to her first boyfriend, nervous and stuttering. It's where I cried when we lost the crop of '89. It's where I laughed when my grandson took his first step stumbling into my arms. This porch has more history than most of your entire lives. And all that history sustains me when I'm having a difficult day, when my old body hurts more than usual, when I miss Martha so much I can barely breathe. I sit here and let this place remind me who I am, where I come from, what I've survived. This porch has seen the best and worst of my life, and it's still here, firm, reliable, waiting for me every evening. My grandson tells me you have anxiety about the future, that you constantly worry about what's coming, about whether you'll have enough money, enough success, enough security. And I understand that worry, believe me. I've lived through the Great Depression, I've lived through wars, I've lived through recessions. I've had years where I didn't know if we could pay the debts, years where the crop failed, years where everything seemed impossible. But I learned something that might help you. You can't control the future, so there's no point living there. You can only control what you do today in this moment. So that's what I do. Every morning I wake up and ask myself what needs to be done today. Which flowers need water today? Which fence needs repair today? Which person needs a call today? And I do those things one at a time without thinking about tomorrow or next month or next year. And when enough today has passed, when I've done enough, when I've cared enough, night comes and I can sleep in peace because I did what I could with what I had. I don't have a 5-year plan. I don't have ambitious goals. I'm not trying to optimize my life or maximize my potential. I'm just trying to live each day as best I can with as much integrity as possible, caring for what's under my responsibility, being kind to whoever crosses my path. And you know what? That's enough. That's always been enough. Look at this sunset behind me. This happens every day. Every day the sun sets, the colors explode in the sky, the light changes from gold to pink to purple to dark blue. It's one of the most beautiful shows that exists, completely free, happening every evening without fail. And most of you miss it because you're inside, looking at screens, living digital lives, forgetting that real life is happening outside. I haven't missed a sunset in years. Each one is different. Each one reminds me that another day passed, that I'm still here to see it, that beauty doesn't need to be sought in distant places. It's right here if you take the time to notice it. This is what I want you to understand. You don't need an extraordinary life to be happy. You don't need to travel the world or be famous or rich or successful according to other people's definitions. You need a chair to sit in. You need something to care for. You need people to love. You need work that has meaning for you. You need time to observe, to think, to simply be. That's all. It's simple. So simple that most of you have complicated it until making it impossible. So my challenge to you is this. Tonight, after watching this video, turn off your phone, go outside, find a place to sit. It doesn't have to be a beautiful porch like mine. It can be a step, a bench, a piece of grass. Sit there for 30 minutes doing nothing but being present. And it's going to be hard. Your mind is going to scream that you're wasting time, that you should be doing something productive, that there are messages to check, content to consume. Ignore that voice. That voice is what's had you anxious and exhausted for years. Instead, listen. Listen to the real sounds of the real world. Watch how the shadows move. Feel the temperature on your skin. Breathe the air, which smells different at every hour of the day. And if you can, do it again tomorrow, and the day after, and after that. Not because I'm telling you to, but because your body, your mind, your soul are starving for this. They're starving for reality, for genuine connection with the physical world, for natural rhythms that aren't dictated by algorithms. Now I have to finish because the sun is almost setting and I don't like to miss that part. But before I go, I want you to know something. I'm proud of you. I know the life you live is more complicated than mine. I know you face pressures I never had to face. But you're here, searching, trying to find a better way to live. And that takes courage. So keep searching. But maybe search backward, toward the simple, toward the old, toward what worked for generations before we decided to complicate everything. Maybe the answer you're looking for is in a pot of soil, in an old chair, in an evening sitting doing nothing in particular. And if after trying this you want to tell me how it went, my grandson tells me you can leave something called a comment below. He'll read them to me. I'd like to know if this helped you. I'd like to know that sharing my simple life serves some purpose for someone somewhere. And if this video made you think, if it reminded you of something you'd forgotten about how to live, my grandson tells me you can give it a like and subscribe to the channel. I'm not entirely sure what that means, but he says it's important. So there you have it. Thank you for listening to this old man talk for so long. Now seriously, turn off that screen and go outside. The real world is waiting for you.